The forest was quiet that evening. Too quiet for Marcus Cole's liking, as he walked through the tall pine trees of Montana, with his rifle over his shoulder, and his boots crunching against the dry leaves beneath his feet. He had been a ranger in these woods for almost 10 years now, and before that he had served as a combat medic in 2 wars that had left scars on his body and deeper ones on his soul. The mountains knew him well, and he knew every trail, every stream, every hidden place where the deer liked to drink and the wolves liked to hunt. But tonight, something felt wrong. Something felt different in the air itself. Marcus stopped walking and tilted his head to listen, his trained ears picking up a sound that did not belong in any forest on earth. It was like wind chimes made of breaking glass, like crystals singing and shattering at the same time, like nothing he had ever heard in 54 years of living. His hand moved to his rifle, out of habit, but he did not raise it as he turned toward the source of that impossible sound. The noise came from the small clearing, about 200 meters to his left, past a thick cluster of young pines that blocked his view. Marcus moved slowly and carefully, the way he had learned to move in combat zones, where every step could be your last. He pushed through the branches and stepped into the clearing, and what he saw there made him freeze completely. A woman lay on the forest floor, but she was not like any woman Marcus had ever seen. Her skin shimmered like polished silver in the fading sunlight, and her hair flowed around her head like threads of spun moonlight. She wore strange clothing that looked like it was made from liquid metal, torn and damaged in several places, but the most striking thing about her was her eyes, large and deep, and filled with swirling colors that reminded Marcus of photographs he had seen of distant galaxies. Was bleeding. Except her blood was not red, but bright white, glowing softly like starlight, leaking from wounds that covered her arms and her side. The strange chiming sound came from her blood as it dripped onto the leaves and grass, each drop singing its own tiny broken song, before fading into silence. Marcus's military training screamed at him to retreat, to report this, to call someone who could handle whatever this situation was. But his medic training was louder, and it told him that this creature, this woman, this being from somewhere beyond his understanding, was hurt and afraid and dying. She saw him then, and her galaxy eyes went wide with terror. She raised one trembling silver hand toward him, and a device on her wrist flickered with broken light as it produced words in a mechanical voice. "Please," the device said in stuttering English. "No more. I submit. Please, no more pain. I will go back. I will obey. Please." Marcus, like a punch to his chest. He had heard that kind of fear before, in the voices of civilians trapped in war zones, in the cries of wounded soldiers who thought they were about to die, in the whimpers of abused animals he had rescued from cruel owners. This was not the fear of the unknown. This was the fear of someone who had been hurt many times and expected to be hurt again. Marcus slowly lowered himself to his knees, making his body smaller and less threatening. He placed his rifle on the ground beside him and raised both his empty hands where she could see them. "Easy now," he said, in the same low, calm voice he used with frightened creatures. "Nobody is going to hurt you. Not while I am here. I promise you that." She stared at him with those impossible eyes, her hands still raised, as if to ward off a blow that she was certain would come. You do not want to," she struggled to find words through her translator. "You do not want to capture, to sell, to return me for reward." "I do not want any of those things," Marcus said gently. "I just want to help you, because you are hurt, and you need help, that is all, nothing more." The confusion on her silver face was almost painful to witness. She looked at him like he was speaking a language her translator could not process, like the concept he was expressing was more alien to her than she was to him. "Why?" she whispered, and that single word carried the weight of centuries. Marcus did not have a complicated answer for her. "Because you are hurting," he said simply, "and I can help. That is reason enough. It always has been." Something broke inside her then, some wall that had been holding back an ocean of pain and loneliness and desperate hope. She began to cry, and her tears were silver like her blood, sliding down her cheeks and falling to the ground where they rang like tiny bells. Marcus moved slowly toward her, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to, but she did not pull away. She let him approach, let him examine her wounds with gentle hands that had treated hundreds of injuries in his lifetime. "I am going to carry you to my cabin," he told her. "It is about 3 miles from here. I have medical supplies there. I can clean these wounds and bandage them. Is that all right with you?" She nodded weakly, still crying, still looking at him like he was some kind of miracle she could not believe was real. Marcus lifted her carefully in his arms, surprised by how light she was despite her height, and began the long walk back through the darkening forest. She weighed almost nothing, like her bones were made of something lighter than human bone, and she trembled against his chest like a frightened bird. "What is your name?" he asked as he walked, partly to keep her conscious, and partly because he wanted to know. Her translator crackled and hummed before producing the answer. "Aelith," she said softly. "Vaelith Serenthi, 7th daughter of the High House of Serenthi, runner, exile, hunted thing." "Well, Vaelith," Marcus said as he stepped over a fallen log and adjusted his grip on her fragile body. "My name is Marcus Cole. I am nobody important, just a ranger who lives alone in the woods and helps creatures in need. And tonight, that creature is you." She made a sound that might have been a laugh if it was not so full of tears. "Nobody important," she repeated. "You say this like it is a small thing, but you are the first person in 300 years of my life who has offered me help without wanting something in return." 300 years, Marcus thought. 300 years, and nobody showed her basic kindness until today. He did not know what kind of universe existed beyond his small blue planet, but in that moment he decided that he did not think much of it. "Well," he said as his cabin finally came into view through the trees, "things are going to be different now. You are safe here, Vaelith. I give you my word on that, and my word is the one thing I have never broken." She looked up at him with those galaxy eyes, filled now with something that looked dangerously close to hope. "I believe you," she whispered. "I do not know why, but I believe you, Marcus Cole." He carried her inside and laid her gently on his bed, and then he got to work saving her life, the same way he had saved so many lives before. With steady hands, clean bandages, and the simple, stubborn human belief that every living thing deserves a chance to survive. The first week was the hardest, because Marcus had no idea how to care for someone whose body worked so differently from his own. Vaelith's wounds did not respond to normal medicine the way human wounds did, and her silver blood kept flowing no matter how many bandages he applied. On the 3rd night, she grew so weak that Marcus feared she would die in his cabin, alone and far from whatever home she had left behind among the stars. But then he noticed something that changed everything. At dawn, when the first rays of sunlight came through his window and touched her silver skin, her wounds began to close just a little bit. He watched in amazement as the light seemed to sink into her body like water into dry soil, and color returned to her pale face. "Starlight," she whispered when she woke and found him staring at her. "My people feed on starlight, on radiation from stars, but your sun is so far away and your atmosphere is so thick. I cannot gather enough energy to heal." Marcus thought about this problem for exactly 3 seconds before he came up with a solution. He wrapped Vaelith in warm blankets and carried her outside to his porch, where he had a wooden bench facing east toward the rising sun. Every morning after that, He brought her outside at dawn, and every evening he carried her out again to watch the sunset paint the mountains gold and pink and purple. He built a small shelter in his backyard with a glass roof so she could rest in direct sunlight during the middle of the day without getting too cold. Within 2 weeks her wounds had finally closed, and within a month she could stand on her own and take short walks around the cabin. "You are very strange," she told him one evening as they sat on the porch watching the stars come out. "You have spent every day caring for me. You have changed your entire life to help me heal, and you still have not asked me for anything. Not information about my past, not even my name. People, not technology, not even answers to the thousands of questions you must have." Pell. Marcus shrugged and took a sip of his coffee, a drink that Valeth found fascinating, even though she could not consume it herself. "Questions can wait," he said. "Your health could not. Besides, I figure you will tell me whatever you want to tell me, whenever you are ready. Pushing for answers never helps anyone." Valeth stared at him for a long moment with those swirling galaxy eyes, and Marcus could see her trying to fit him into some framework of understanding that kept failing. "Where I come from," she said finally, "kindness like yours does not exist. It simply does not. The hegemony teaches us from birth that compassion is weakness, that mercy is a tool for fools, that every interaction between beings is a transaction where one side wins and the other loses." "Sounds like a lonely way to live," Marcus said quietly. "It is," Valeth agreed. "It is the loneliest way to live. But it is all I knew until I crashed in your forest and you carried me home like I mattered." She told him her story then, piece by piece over the following weeks, and each piece broke his heart a little more. Valeth was a princess of sorts, a seventh daughter of one of the most powerful families in an interstellar empire called the Serenthi Hegemony. But being a seventh daughter was not a blessing in her culture, it was a curse. Seventh daughters had no inheritance rights, no political power, no value except as bargaining chips to be traded in marriage alliances with other powerful families. Valeth had been promised in marriage before she was even born, contracted to a warlord named Keth Voralian, who ruled a sector of space through terror and violence. "He is known for breaking his brides," Valeth said in a voice that trembled, despite her best efforts to keep it steady. "He enjoys it, the breaking. It is a game to him. Sufficiently broken, he discards them, and acquires new ones." Marcus felt his hands curl into fists at his sides, an old familiar anger rising in his chest. "So you ran," he said. "So I ran," she confirmed. "I stole a small ship, and I flew as far and as fast as I could, jumping randomly through space until my navigation systems failed, and I crashed here, on a world so primitive and remote that I hoped they would never think to look for me." "And now your family is hunting you," Marcus said, "not to rescue you, but to drag you back to him." Valeth nodded, her silver hair catching the moonlight as she moved. "I am damaged goods now, but I am still valuable goods. The alliance must be preserved. The contract must be honored. My feelings and my life and my future are irrelevant to these calculations." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, looking up at the stars that suddenly seemed much less beautiful than they had before. "You know what I think," he said at last. "I think your whole empire has it backwards. I think compassion is not weakness at all. I think it takes more strength to be kind than to be cruel. Cruelty is easy. Anyone can hurt others. But kindness, real kindness without expecting anything in return, that takes courage." Valeth turned to look at him with something like wonder in her eyes. "You truly believe that?" she said, and it was not a question. "I know it," Marcus replied. "I have seen the worst things people can do to each other. I have been in wars, and I have treated wounds that would give you nightmares. And the one thing I learned from all of that is simple. The people who survive and keep their souls intact are the ones who never stop being kind. Cruelty destroys the cruel, as surely as it destroys their victims. Valeth was silent for a long time after that, and Marcus let her think without interruption. When she finally spoke again, her voice was different somehow. More certain. My whole life I was taught that the universe operates on power alone, that the strong take and the weak surrender, that kindness is just weakness wearing a pleasant mask. But you, Marcus Cole, you are not weak. You are one of the strongest people I have ever met. And you are also the kindest. This should not be possible according to everything I was taught. She stood up and walked to the edge of the porch, looking up at the sky full of stars that held her hunters somewhere in their vastness. You have made me question everything I thought I knew about how beings should treat each other. You have shown me that there is another way to exist in this universe, a way built on compassion instead of conquest, on mercy instead of domination. Marcus stood and joined her at the railing, standing close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his human body. You are a person, Valeth, he said gently, not property, not a bargaining chip, not damaged goods, a person, and persons get to choose their own paths. They get to decide who they want to be and how they want to live. That is not just a human right. That is a universal right that no empire should be allowed to take away. She turned to face him, and for the first time since he had found her crying in the forest, she smiled. It was a real smile, bright and full of hope, and it transformed her alien face into something achingly beautiful. I am starting to believe you, she said. Against all logic and all my training, I am starting to believe that you might be right. Marcus smiled back at her, and reached out to squeeze her silver hand gently in his rough human one. That is a good start, he said, and I will be here to remind you whenever you forget. She did not forget, not once in the months that followed, and slowly but surely, the broken princess began to heal in ways that had nothing to do with her physical wounds. 3 months had passed since Marcus found Valeth crying in the forest, and those 3 months had changed both of them in ways neither could have predicted. Valeth had grown strong again, her body fully healed, and her spirit renewed by the simple daily kindness that Marcus offered without hesitation or expectation. She had learned to laugh again, something she had not done since she was a very young child, before she understood what her future held. She had learned to hope again, which was an even more dangerous thing. But danger was coming, and Valeth knew it, even if she wished she could pretend otherwise. Her family's trackers were good, very good, and sooner or later they would find the trail that led to this small blue world hiding at the edge of explored space. If she stayed here with Marcus, she would doom him and his entire planet to the attention of the hegemony. One evening in late autumn, when the leaves had turned gold and red, the air carried the crisp promise of coming winter. Valeth found Marcus sitting on his favorite spot by the stream that ran behind his cabin. She sat down beside him on the cold rocks and watched the water flow past, gathering her courage for what she needed to say. I have to leave, she said finally, the words hurting more than any wound she had ever suffered. Marcus did not seem surprised, which somehow made it worse. I know, he said quietly. I have known for a while now. I can see it in your eyes when you look at the sky, that mixture of longing and fear that tells me your past is catching up with you. If I stay, Valeth began, but Marcus raised his hand to stop her. You do not need to explain, he said. I understand. You have people hunting you, and if they find you here, they will find us too. You are trying to protect me and my world by leaving. I get it. I do not like it, but I get it. Valeth felt tears forming in her eyes, strange silver tears that sang when they fell. You are the first person who has ever made me feel like I matter, she said, her voice breaking. You saved my life, and then you saved something even more important. You saved my ability to believe that goodness exists in this universe. How can I ever repay that? How can I ever thank you enough? Marcus turned to look at her, with those warm brown eyes that had shown her nothing but kindness since the moment they met. "You do not owe me anything, Valeth. That is the whole point. Kindness is not a debt to be repaid. It is a gift freely given. You take it and you carry it with you, and maybe someday you pass it on to someone else who needs it." "But I want to give you something," Valeth insisted, "not because I owe you, but because I want you to have something that could help you someday." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device, a crystal sphere about the size of a marble that glowed with soft inner light. "This is a stellmark," she explained. "It is keyed to my bloodline, and my bloodline alone. If you ever activate it, no matter where I am in the galaxy, I will know. I will feel it like a call in my very blood." Marcus looked at the glowing sphere with uncertainty. "Valeth, I cannot accept this. I did not help you for reward or future favors." "I know," she said with a sad smile. "That is exactly why I want you to have it. You would never use it for selfish reasons. You would never call me unless you truly needed help, unless your world faced a darkness it could not overcome alone." She pressed the stellmark into his hand and closed his fingers around it. "Keep it safe," she said, "and if the day ever comes when Earth needs a friend among the stars, activate it. I promise you, Marcus Cole, I promise you on everything I have learned here, and everything you have taught me, I will come." Marcus looked down at the tiny glowing sphere in his hand, then looked back up at her face. "And what about you?" he asked. "What will you do out there? Where will you go? How will you survive with your whole empire hunting you?" Valeth took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "I do not know exactly," she admitted, "but I know what I will not do. I will not hide anymore. I will not run anymore. You taught me that I am a person with worth and dignity, that I have the right to choose my own path." She stood up and looked at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "There are others like me out there," she said. "Others who have been crushed by the hegemony's cruelty. Others who have been told that kindness is weakness and mercy is foolishness. Maybe I can find them. Maybe I can show them what you showed me. Maybe I can plant the seeds of something new." Marcus stood up beside her, his heart full of pride and sorrow in equal measure. "You are going to start a revolution," he said. "Not a question." "Perhaps," Valeth replied. "Or perhaps I will fail and die and be forgotten. But either way, I will die as myself. Not as the broken bride of some monster. Not as a bargaining chip in my family's political games. I will die as Valeth Serenthi, the woman who learned that kindness is strength from a strange human in a forest on a small blue world." They walked back to the cabin together in comfortable silence. And that night, they sat on the porch one last time, watching the stars wheel overhead. Marcus pointed out the constellations his people had named, and Valeth pointed out the stars that held worlds she had visited, and somehow the universe seemed both much larger and much smaller than it had before. At midnight, a soft hum filled the air, and a ship descended from the darkness, a small, sleek vessel that had been hidden and cloaked in the mountains since Valeth's crash. "My repairs are complete," Valeth said softly. "I can leave whenever I am ready." She turned to face Marcus, and he saw that she was crying again, those silver tears flowing freely down her cheeks. "I do not want to say goodbye," she whispered. "Then do not say goodbye," Marcus replied, his own eyes suspiciously wet. "Say, see you later. Say, until we meet again. Say any of the things people say when they know they will find each other again someday." Valeth laughed through her tears, a beautiful sound that Marcus knew he would remember for the rest of his life. "Until we meet again, then, Marcus Cole." "Until we meet again, Valeth Serenthi." She hugged him then, wrapping her silver arms around his broad human shoulders, and holding on tight, like she was trying to memorize the feeling of being held by someone who cared. Then she pulled away, walked to her ship, and paused at the ramp to look back one final time. "You taught me something that no tutor or priest or politician ever could," she called out to him. "You taught me that power without mercy is just cruelty wearing a crown. I will not forget, Marcus. I will never forget. The ship rose silently into the sky, became a point of light among the stars, and then vanished into the vastness of space. Marcus stood alone in the clearing for a long time after she left, holding the Stellmark in his hand, and looking up at a sky that would never look the same to him again. "Go change the universe," he said softly to the empty night. "I believe in you." Then he walked back to his cabin, put the Stellmark in a small wooden box, and placed the box on his shelf. He did not know if he would ever see Valeth again. He did not know if she would survive her revolution or die trying. But he knew that whatever happened, he had done something good when he carried that wounded stranger home from the forest. And sometimes, he thought as he lay down to sleep, that is enough. Sometimes one act of kindness is all you can give, and you just have to trust that it will matter. 20 years later, he would learn just how much it had mattered. 20 years is a long time in the life of a human being. Long enough for hair to turn gray and joints to grow stiff. Long enough for memories to soften around the edges like photographs left in the sun. Marcus Cole was 74 years old now, retired from his ranger duties, but still living in the same cabin in the Montana wilderness where he had always lived. He had never married, never had children, never really wanted those things if he was being honest with himself. His life had been full in other ways, full of purpose and meaning, and the quiet satisfaction of helping those who needed help. Sometimes at night, he would take out the small wooden box from his shelf and look at the Stellmark inside, watching it glow with that soft inner light that had never dimmed. He would think about Valeth and wonder where she was, if she was safe, if she was happy, if she had found the revolution she was looking for. He never activated the beacon, because he had promised only to use it if Earth truly needed help, and so far Earth had managed to muddle through its problems on its own. The climate wars had come and gone, leaving scars on the land and the people, but not destroying them entirely. Nations had risen and fallen, technologies had advanced, humanity had even sent its first crewed missions to Mars. Life went on the way life always did, messy and complicated, and somehow beautiful despite all its flaws. Then came the day the sky broke open, and everything changed. Marcus was sitting on his porch drinking his morning coffee, when the light turned wrong, when the blue sky suddenly darkened like someone had thrown a blanket over the sun. He looked up and felt his coffee cup slip from his suddenly numb fingers. Ships hung in the sky above the mountains, massive black vessels that looked like someone had carved them from pieces of a nightmare. They were shaped like insects, like beetles or wasps, sharp angles and gleaming surfaces that seemed to swallow light rather than reflect it. There were dozens of them visible from his porch alone, and something told Marcus that there were many, many more across the rest of the world. He went inside and turned on his old radio, hands shaking as he searched for any signal that might explain what was happening. What he found was panic and chaos and the beginning of the end. The creatures called themselves the Vreth Collective, and they had come to Earth not for conquest or diplomacy, but for something much simpler and much worse. They had come to feed. The Vreth were a swarm species that traveled from world to world, consuming all biological matter they could find, stripping planets down to bare rock before moving on to the next victim. Their ultimatum was broadcast on every frequency, in every language simultaneously, a message that left no room for negotiation or hope. Surrender your biomass, or be harvested. Resistance is inefficient. Compliance will result in a faster end. You have one standard rotation to decide. Earth's governments tried to fight, of course, because humans have never been good at surrendering, even when surrender might be the logical choice. Missiles were launched, and aircraft scrambled, and every weapon humanity had ever invented was turned against the invaders. None of it mattered. The Vreth ships absorbed nuclear strikes like a human might absorb a light rain, their shields flickering briefly before returning to full strength. They did not even bother to shoot back at first, apparently considering humanity's weapons too pathetic to warrant a response. But when the deadline passed and humanity refused to surrender, the Vreth began their harvest. Cities burned, millions died, and the screams of a dying world echoed across radio frequencies that Marcus could not bear to listen to, but could not bring himself to turn. For 3 days, he sat in his cabin as the world ended around him. Too old to fight, and too stubborn to run, and too human to simply give up. On the 3rd day, he finally took the wooden box down from the shelf and opened it for the first time in 2 decades. The Stellmark glowed in his palm, warm and steady, a tiny light in the growing darkness. He thought about what activating it would mean, about calling out across the stars to a woman he had known for only 3 months so very long ago. What if she was dead, killed in her revolution before it could even begin? What if she had forgotten him, one brief chapter in a life that spanned centuries? What if she had become the very thing she fled, corrupted by power the way so many were corrupted throughout history? But then, Marcus thought about the woman who had cried in his arms, the woman who had smiled when he told her she was a person not property, the woman who had promised to come if he ever. He thought about her last words to him, about power without mercy being cruelty wearing a crown, and he made his decision. His old arthritic fingers found the activation point on the Stellmark, a small depression that glowed brighter when he touched it. He pressed down and felt the device pulse, once, twice, 3 times, sending its signal out into the void between stars. Then he set the Stellmark down on his table and walked out onto his porch to watch the alien ships darken his sky. "I hope you can hear me, Valeth," he said to the stars hidden behind the enemy fleet. "I hope you remember your promise, because we sure could use a friend right about now." 12,000 light-years away, in the command center of a flagship that dwarfed anything the Vreth had ever built, a silver-skinned woman suddenly gasped and pressed her hand to her heart. She was standing at the center of a holographic display showing fleet positions across 3 stars. Systems, surrounded by officers who looked to her for guidance in all things. Her appearance had not changed much in 20 years because her people aged slowly, but her bearing had changed completely. She no longer looked like a frightened runaway princess. She looked like an empress, like a warrior, like someone who had built an empire from nothing and would defend it with her last breath. "Your Majesty," one of her admirals said with concern, "are you unwell?" Valeth Sorenthi, liberator of the 7th Sector, founder of the Free Ascendancy, champion of the kind, shook her head slowly as tears formed in her galaxy eyes. "No," she said, her voice catching. "I am not unwell. I am being called. Someone I love very much is in danger. Someone who saved my life when I had nothing to offer in return." She straightened her spine and turned to face her assembled officers with eyes that blazed with sudden fire. "Commanded, maximum burn. All ships. I want the entire fleet moving within the hour." The Admiral hesitated for just a moment. "Your Majesty, the Sol system is uncontacted, primitive. They have no formal alliance with us. Our charter does not require us to." "I know what our charter says," Valeth interrupted, her voice soft, but carrying the weight of absolute authority. "I wrote it myself, and I am telling you that this world is under my personal protection. This world gave me everything I have, everything I am, and I will not let it burn." She smiled then, a fierce and terrible and beautiful smile that her officers had learned to recognize over the years. It was the smile she wore before battles, the smile that meant she had already decided to win, and was simply waiting for reality to catch up with her decision. "Besides," she added as she walked toward the door, "what is the point of building an empire on kindness if we do not answer when kindness. Her fleet began to move. 2,000 warships, turning as one toward a distant yellow star, where an old man sat on his porch, waiting for a miracle. The miracle was on its way. The Vreth swarm had been harvesting Earth for 5 days, when space itself tore open above the dying planet. Marcus was still alive, somehow, hiding in the mountains with a small group of survivors who had fled the cities before the worst of the harvest began. They had lost contact with most of the outside world, their communications jammed by the alien ships that hung over every major population center. What news did get through was uniformly terrible. Stories of billions dead and more dying every hour. Stories of humanity's last desperate resistance, crumbling like sandcastles before a rising tide. Marcus had started to lose hope, had started to think that maybe he had waited too long, or that Valeth had never received his call, or that she had simply chosen not to answer. Then came the light. It started as a single point of brilliance in the night sky, brighter than any star, brighter even than the alien ships that blotted out the heavens. Point expanded into a line, and the line spread into a circle, and the circle became a wound in reality itself, that blazed with colors that human eyes had no names for. Through that wound came ships, hundreds of ships, and then thousands of ships, pouring into Earth's space like water through a broken dam. They were beautiful in a way the Vreth ships were not, graceful and gleaming, and decorated with a symbol that Marcus could somehow see even from the ground far below. It was a phoenix cradling a sun in its wings, and it was painted on every hull in colors of gold and silver. The Vreth reacted immediately, their harvest ships breaking off from the surface to form defensive formations, their weapons charging with angry red light that painted the clouds the color of blood. But the newcomers did not hesitate, did not slow, did not show any sign of fear as they dove into battle against creatures that had conquered 100 worlds, broadcast on every frequency that the Vreth had not managed to jam. A voice that he recognized even after 20 years. "I am Valeth Serenthi," the voice said, strong and clear and burning with conviction. "Empress of the free Serenthi Ascendancy, liberator of the 7th sector, and this world is under my protection." Marcus felt tears streaming down his face as he listened, as he heard the woman he had saved so long ago announce herself to 2 species who had never heard her name. 20 years ago I crashed on this planet, hunted and broken and ready to die. The beings who found me did not sell me or trade me or hand me over to my enemies for profit. A man I will never forget carried me to his home and healed my wounds and asked for nothing in return. Her voice cracked slightly, but she pressed on. He taught me what the galaxy had forgotten. He taught me that kindness is not weakness, that compassion is not foolishness, that mercy is not a flaw to be exploited, but a virtue to be celebrated. Everything I have built in the 20 years since that day, every ship in this fleet, every soul who flies under my banner, exists because one human being chose to be kind when he had no reason to be. The Vreth commander responded with a snarl that needed no translation. "These creatures are our harvest. We claimed them first. Withdraw or be destroyed." Valeth laughed, and even through the radio distortion, Marcus could hear the joy in that sound. "You claim them because they cannot stop you. You harvest them because they cannot fight back. You are not conquerors. You are parasites, and my ascendancy was founded specifically to deal with parasites. You will leave this world now, or you will die here. There will be no negotiation, there will be no treaty, there will be no second chance. Choose quickly." The Vreth chose wrong, as bullies often do when someone finally stands up to them. Minutes, according to the recordings that historians would later study in great detail. 11 minutes from the first Vreth ship firing to the last Vreth ship fleeing into the void, trailing smoke and debris and the shattered remnants of its arrogance. The Ascendancy fleet did not simply defeat the Vreth. They dismantled them with a precision that spoke of long practice and perfect coordination. Each ship knew exactly where to be and what to do, working together like the fingers of a single hand. And beneath that mechanical perfection was something the Vreth could never have understood. The crews of those ships fought with passion, with fury, with the righteous anger of people who believed absolutely in what they were defending. Because every single one of them knew the story of Valeth and Marcus. Every single one of them had learned that story as the founding myth of their civilization. They were not just fighting for Earth, they were fighting for the principle that had made their empire possible. They were fighting for kindness. When the last Vreth ship had fled, and the skies of Earth were clear again for the first time in days, a single shuttle descended from the Ascendancy flagship. It landed in a clearing in the Montana wilderness, a clearing surrounded by pine trees that had somehow survived the devastation that had claimed so much of the world. An old man was waiting there, standing alone, with his hands at his sides and his heart pounding in his chest. The shuttle door opened, and Valeth stepped out, looking almost exactly as she had the last time he saw her, silver skin gleaming in the sunlight, and galaxy eyes swirling with emotions too complex to name. They stood looking at each other for a long moment, separated by 20 years and 12,000 light-years, and experiences that neither could fully imagine. Then Valeth walked forward and stopped in front of Marcus, close enough that he could see the tears forming in her impossible eyes. "You came," he said, his voice rough with age and emotion. "You called," she replied. "I promised I would come if you ever needed me. And I always keep my promises. You taught me the value of keeping promises." Marcus shook his head slowly, struggling to find words for what he was stealing. "I did not do much. I just helped someone who needed help. Anyone would have done the same." "No," Valeth said firmly. "That is where you are wrong. Anyone would not have done the same. I know because I spent 300 years among the stars before I met you, and no one ever did. You were different, Marcus Cole. You were kind without motive, generous without expectation, merciful without weakness." She gestured at the sky, at the fleet that hung in orbit above them, like a constellation of guardian angels. "Because of you, I built an empire that believes kindness is sacred. 12 billion souls across 200 worlds live free today, because you taught me that mercy was possible. This fleet is not payment for what you did. Payment would be impossible. This fleet is proof. Proof that what you gave me was real, that it mattered, that one act of compassion offered freely can echo across the stars." Marcus looked up at the ships above them, at the symbol of the phoenix and the sun that marked them all, and he finally understood the magnitude of what his simple choice had created. "I just did what felt right," he whispered. Valeth smiled the same smile she had smiled on his porch 20 years ago, the first real smile he had ever seen on her face. "I know," she said. "That is what made it so powerful. You did not calculate or strategize or wonder what you would get in return. You just helped because helping was the right thing to do. And that, Marcus Cole, is the rarest and most precious thing in all the universe." She took his hands in hers, silver fingers intertwining with weathered human ones. "Welcome to the Ascendancy," she said. "Your world is safe now, and it will be safe forever. That is my promise to you, the promise of an empire built on the foundation of your kindness." Marcus looked into her galaxy eyes and saw the future unfolding there, a future where Earth was no longer alone, where humanity had friends among the stars, where the simple lesson he had taught a crying stranger in the forest would ripple outward through time and space until the whole galaxy was changed by it. "Thank you," he said, though the words felt completely inadequate. Valeth shook her head and squeezed his hands gently. "No, Marcus, thank you. Thank you for finding me when I was lost. Thank you for carrying me when I was wounded. Thank you for teaching me that another way was possible." She smiled through her silver tears. "Thank you for being kind." Above them the fleet held station, patient and powerful and ready to defend this small blue world for as long as it existed. And on the flagship's hull, the phoenix cradled its son, a symbol of hope and rebirth, born from a chance encounter in a forest 20 years ago, when one lonely human chose kindness over fear and changed everything forever.